Hello and welcome, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I have a tutorial showing you how to use some of these beautiful moulds from Stamperia. I'm starting with a tin that I reserved from Christmas. I kept it because it's a really pretty tin. It did contain fudge, but sadly now there's no fudge left. So I'm going to use it to store some of my crafting tools. But I want to make this look a little bit pretty first. I've got some white gesso and I'm going to put this around the top and the bottom of my tin, and I'm going to use the lid from my tin as a place for me to squirt out the gesso without me making a mess on my desk. And while I add that to the top and bottom of the tin, I'm going to say that if you want to see the original video where I showed you how to actually make the moulds using the cream paste from Stamperia, I will provide a link. I'm going to add just a light touch of gesso. It's all I need. Gesso is a great way of adding tooth to something that you want to add paint or an effect or a wax to later on. And when that's dry, I'll be able to add the next effect. I'm also going to apply a thin layer of gesso to the result that you get from the mould. So this is the cream paste that's been poured into the mould and left to set overnight, and then when you peel it away you get this beautiful effect depending on which mould you have used. The gesso again gives this a nice tooth for me to add some acrylic paint to. The acrylic paint that I'm using is from Paper Artsy and it's called Honeydew. This is a pale lemony cream colour and it's perfect for taking down the white of my moulds. Now that this is dry, I've got a little plastic glove on. I use this glove all the time for applying my metallic waxes, and the wax that I'm using is called Renaissance Gold and that's by Pebbio. The glove is a great way of applying this. You don't really want to use a brush because you will lose a lot of the wax, and by applying it with your finger you would get most of it stuck on your finger. Using the glove is a great way of applying it because it means that you get the maximum use of your wax without getting absolutely covered in it yourself. I'm going to apply the wax to the very bottom and the very top of my tin, and when I come to the top I'm going to take the wax a little bit further down from the top. This means that when I wrap some paper around my tin, I don't have to worry too much about the paper being right to the very top. I've given myself plenty of space to get my paper fixed in place without having any silver from the tin showing through. Rubbing the wax with a piece of dry cloth at the end removes any excess and leaves a lovely sheen. I have a piece of packaging paper which I've cut to the same height as my tin, and I've got some Mod Podge and I'm going to apply this to the side of the tin. It's always tempting when you're starting a project to stick the paper in the front because you tend to work from the front. By applying the paper from the side, it means that if I get any errors or if it doesn't seal down as well as I would like, it's more hidden. I'm lining this up with the edge of the tin. I'm going to stick it into the Mod Podge. I'm going to hold it in place for a moment or two until I'm confident that there's a little bit of tack there, just enough to make sure that it holds in position. And then I'm going to take my Mod Podge again, or you can use any glue, but it's advisable to use a paintbrush if you're applying this. It's the easiest way to do it. And I'm going to apply more Mod Podge underneath, straight onto the tin. And then I'm going to wrap the brown paper around it. That should hold everything in place. And I'm going to use a little clip just to grab it at the top and make sure that it doesn't move as I work my way around the tin, applying more glue until I get right to the edge of the paper. Now when I get to the end of the paper, I'm going to apply the Mod Podge to the paper itself rather than to the tin, and this way I'm confident that I'll get the best seal that I can. I'm going to press everything into place with my hands to make sure that it's as well glued as it can be. When that's dried, I'm going to take 2 little bottles of Nouveau drops that I happen to have in my stash, and I'm going to add these around the base of my tin. They'll add just a little bit of extra interest. So I'm starting with the gold coloured, coppery coloured one, and I'm leaving a space in between each application so that I can add my second colour, which is the bronze one. I'll do that all the way around and then I'll leave it to dry. And this one I left to dry overnight, and when I run my finger around it, they're all perfectly solid. Now I'm going to use my Mod Podge again, and I'm going to add my moulded shape to my tin. I'm going to start by adding the Mod Podge onto the tin itself, and that will help me keep my moulded shape into place. So I start with the tin, and then I'll expand out to the edges of the moulded piece itself. That's the best way to make sure you get the glue where it's needed, applying it directly to the inside of the item that you want to glue. Mod Podge is very good because it only takes a couple of moments just holding things in place with your hands, and you'll get a good enough tack that you can then keep working on your piece to make sure everything is going to hold, particularly around the bottom and around the top as well. I found some old raffia and I've just tied it around to hold everything in place. I left that to dry, and now I can remove those pieces of raffia or string or whatever, wool, whatever you happen to have, and I can begin to fit in the second piece, because one piece on its own isn't enough to go around my tin. And this is where these are such good fun, because they are very flexible. So you could put this around a completely circular jar or an oval jar like I'm using here, or whatever shape you have, and then add in pieces as you need them. Here I've folded it back on itself, I've added a pencil mark, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to just draw a line where I know I need to cut this to make sure that I get everything matched up beautifully. It's easy to draw on it, you can see the mark, it's very clear, and it's very easy to cut as well. It's a wonderful, flexible medium. I really enjoyed playing with this. And now that that is cut to size, I'm going to take my Mod Podge again, and I'm going to make sure that I glue it into place exactly where it needs to be. Applying the glue directly to the tin again, so I've got something to hold my piece in place. And then I will add a little bit of extra glue around the top and the bottom to make sure it grabs correctly. Once I've applied my Mod Podge, I'm going to take another piece of raffia and I'm going to hold it in place. I'm just going to tie it around the top of my design. And then I'm going to come back and deal with this little piece that isn't an exact match for the piece beside it. And all I'm going to do is take a little cut, a little corner off that bottom piece so that it's not such an obvious break in the pattern. I've added a few more pieces of raffia around the piece to hold it in place, and you can see what a good connection it gets either side. I'm using some silk that I have to add a little bit of interest to the top, and I'm going to use Mod Podge again to glue that into position. Then I have some ribbon, and I'm going to tie this around the top of my jar, and I'm going to complete it with a little bow. And once I cut away the raffia pieces, I'm going to add a little bit of final decoration to it using my Nouveau drops, and I'm just going to add little dots into the centre of some of the design. That adds a nice amount of detail, you just have to be disciplined about when you stop. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your time. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to leave you with a little music and some close-ups of this project, and until we meet again, take care.